Good evening. My name is Brian D'Amico, Manager of Educational Services here at VectorVest, and it's my pleasure to present your Strategy of the Week this evening for Friday, August 23rd, 2013, titled Tips to Winning the VectorVest Canada Challenge. Back on August 2nd, Steve Chappell introduced the VectorVest Canada Challenge. In his Strategy of the Week video, he showed you that you have the opportunity to win either $500, $1,000, or $1,500. Tonight, I'll give you several tips to help you win the challenge. By using these tips, you might only spend an hour of your time and walk away with the big money. The first tip, of course, would be to watch the Strategy of the Week presentation back on August 2nd, where we introduced that challenge. That video will describe the rules of the challenge, the settings of your backtest, and how we will be scoring the challenge. Even though I will cover some of those things in tonight's video, for a more detailed description, make sure you watch that video from August 2nd. So let's get right to the tips. The sequence I would use to develop my contest entry would involve three main steps. First, I'd want to find a few bullish searches that looked promising. In other words, they showed good raw performance during up markets. Next, I'd want to find a few bearish searches that also looked promising. And finally, I'd combine the bullish searches with the bearish searches into a trading plan. Well, we're going to do three things. Number one, quick test. Number two, back test. And number three, auto test. You'll see that the auto tester plays a huge part in creating a trading plan. If you don't already have the auto tester, there is a link in the views tonight where you can get a free 2-week trial. So let's get right to it and show you how you can find bullish searches that are promising. Here's an image of the market timing graph from July 2nd, 2008 to July 31st, 2013. And this is the period that we used for the challenge. And you'll notice on the graph I've placed our confirmed market timing calls. And I did that to get an idea of the major turning points in the market. Instead of quick testing every search for every signal, I'd want to start by finding the searches that perform best during the big moves in the market. For example, I'd start by going from here down to here, and of course be testing the bearish searches during that sequence. And then I'd go from here up to this major turning point up here, and then I'd test from here up to here, and then work my way back down from here down to here, and then during the next up wave from here to here. And don't forget about this period over here. It looks very flat, right? Even though this is not a major turning point in the market, it's still worthy of testing. So I'd actually start from probably right about here and just go to current. You can see there's a slight upwards bias there. And if you can find a search that did well during this time period, you should be onto something. First off, I'd start with the bullish time periods, which means from here up to here, this one right there, this one here, and then this one over here. Now, of course, if you really wanted to find a top performing trading plan, you would go the extra mile and do testing from each signal. What I'm giving you here is a tip to get started. And what I've done is I've put together a list of all of these dates to help you out. And you can see that right here. And I'll pause this here for just a moment in case you want to pause your video and write down these dates, or just do a print screen to print out these dates. So I've listed the start dates over on the left and the end dates here, and whether it was an up or down market. Of course, if you wanted to test every up and down signal in VectorVest, we do provide our market calls built right into VectorVest. Let me show you where those are. So I'll go right into VectorVest here, and at the top there's a tab that says Views. You just come over to the left-hand side in the Views Manager. You can see there's a link right here for the Market Calls Viewer. And by default, it lists all of the confirmed up and confirmed down dates, but you can change that to view any of the other market timing signals. So let me show you how to go about finding some searches that show some promise. So let's go back over to the Unit Search tab. Let's begin our testing using the last time period I showed on the graph, which was August 16th, 2012, until July 31st, 2013, which was the end date of the challenge. You're able to use any of the searches that are listed in the Unisearch tool, as well as any search that you create on your own. Steve did mention that if you do create a search on your own, it needs to meet certain criteria, such as the price being over 1 for long positions or above 5 for shorting positions. The average volume needs to be above 50,000, and you can't use a custom watch list. Let's say I'm going to use the searches in the retirement folder to start off with. But keep in mind, what I'm going to show you here, you would do the same thing for your own searches to test those out. So I'm going to open up the searches retirement folder, and I'm going to come over and change the date back to 2012 and the 16th of August. So I'll click OK, and I'm just going to go through the list. So you would start off by running the first search. We're going to quick test the top 10. You can see we had a 14% gain, but that was to August 23rd, so we want to change that back to July 31st and rerun the test. Alright, you see here 10.75. So you'd either write that one down or just remember it. I suggest writing it down, so I'll close that. So it's 10.75. I'll double click on the next one, quick test this one. Wow, alright, 18%, so that's good. Double click the next one, no results. Double click the next one, quick test those. Not so hot. So you get the idea. You'd basically run each search and quick test it. And from this list, we saw that high VST plus YSG stocks did the best. But what you would do is you would actually do this for all of the searches that you're interested in. And if you really want to be thorough, you would do it for all the bullish searches. And then you'd make a list of the searches that showed the most promise. And then what you would do is you'd go in there and change the date up here to another time period, run it, and then quick test it again. Another tip I'll give you here is the more time you spend doing these quick tests, the easier your life will be when you go to the next stage. So put some time in, do a bunch of quick tests during as many time periods as you can, and get a list of 3 to 5 searches that show promise based on their raw performance from an up signal to the down signal. Once you have your list of searches, you want to take it to the next step, which is to do some back testing. And this is where you're going to begin to develop your trading plan. So what I'll do is I'll come up to the back tester. I mentioned earlier that in addition to the back tester, you will make your life a lot easier, get better results, and get faster results if you also have the plugin called the Auto Tester. And again, there is a link in the views tonight to get a 2-week free trial. So I'm going to come down here and I'll click on Back Test an Idea. I'm going to leave the default account settings. I'll come to the next tab here, which is the Market Timing tab, and this is where the Auto Tester comes into play. Because I'm going to create a back test, which not only does that one time period that we were looking at, but I'm going to test out multiple confirmed up and down calls in one test, which really saves a lot of time. By having the auto tester, I'm able to do this. So I'm going to leave this as confirmed calls, because those are the dates I was using at first on that graph that I showed you. So I'm going to come down to the automation rules up, and at first I'm again going to get some raw performance. I'm going to test out our search just by buying stocks in a confirmed up call using no stop criteria, and then sell them all in a confirmed down call. So let's say the search that we ended up with was that high VST plus YSG stocks search. So I'll come over here and select it from the list, and there it is. I'm going to use no stop criteria, and then come over to the More Settings tab. Once again, in the video Steve did on August 2nd, he detailed all of the settings that are required for the challenge. One of them is that you need to have at least 5 positions, so I'm going to leave this as 10 for now. I'll open all 10 immediately, and I'm going to scroll down and show you a couple of other settings that are required. You need to set this limit repurchases to 31 days. There we go. And the average volume to 2%. On a confirmed down call, we'll go to cash. And our test period, like I said, I want to test a longer period. So I'm not just going to go from August 16th. I'm going to actually go back all the way to January of 2012. And you can see here, confirmed up call was here. So I'm going to go from that confirmed up call to the end of the challenge, which was July 31st. And I'll give this a name, High VST plus YSG. And let's just run this one. Alright, so raw performance, 13.9%. And remember, all this did was buy 10 stocks, hold them until the confirmed down call, and then go into cash. So at this point, using the back tester with the auto tester, once you get your raw performance, you're going to fine tune your trading plan. And your first step should be to test out different stop criteria. So that's my next tip. Just come in here, and I'm going to create a copy of this. Come to the automation rules, go to stop criteria. And there's usually a handful that I go to first whenever I'm doing my testing. For example, I'll start off with a percent gain loss of 30% and a loss of 10%. And I'll go over to the more settings. I'll automatically replace closed positions as long as we're still in this confirmed up call. I'll leave all the other settings the same. Change the name so I know what's going on here. So I'll do just 30/10 and run it again. Alright, so far 14.8%. So what you do is create a copy of that and see if you can beat it. So you come in here, and we're going to change the stop criteria to, how about recommendation equals a sell? I'll leave everything else the same. I'll just do rec equals S and rerun it. Alright, it didn't perform as well as a 30% gain, 10% loss. So I'm not even going to save this one. I'll just edit over the top of it. And one of the other go-to stop criteria that I use is just a trailing stop. So I'll come in here. I'll use a 10% trail. I'll just come in here and rename this. I'll just call it TS for 10 for trailing stop of 10 and rerun it. There's several other stop criteria that you could use. You saw there was other settings in there for the trailing stop. You could use other percentage gain loss like a 50-10 or 50-20. Alright, so this one actually performed better than the previous one. So now I'll move forward with this stop criteria. Once you've gotten to the point where you're have results that you like with your stop criteria, one of the other things you might want to test out would be other market timing signals. So maybe instead of the confirmed calls, you want to test out the green light buyer RT kicker. So I'll just create a copy of this, change it from confirmed calls to GLB RT kicker, and again you need the auto tester for this. Automation rules up. I'll come over to the more settings, and I don't want to close positions when I enter a green light because it could go to a neutral signal and then right back to a green light. And I don't want to close all my positions in that case. So I'm going to select close any position that gets entered from a different situation. That way I keep in my long positions until I go to the confirmed down signal, in which case I will still go to cash. Now I'll come over here and I'm actually going to rename this one and just call it GLB RT kicker. And let's rerun it. There we go. We can see that using a different timer produced better results. So now I would move forward and do some more testing and keep my market timing signal as the GLB RT kicker. Of course, I could test out other market timing signals, but for time's sake, let's say that you ended up with this timing signal as the best one. You can then come in here and change some other settings, go back to automation rules, and the next thing that I would typically test would be money management, position sizing, number of positions in the portfolio, things like that. The first thing I go to is the number of positions. So instead of 10 positions, let's lower this down to 5. So I'll lower that down to 5. I'll leave everything else the same, except I'll call it 5 POS for 5 positions and rerun it. Alright, we did better once again. We're up to 18% gain, and we actually improved our drawdown. So I'll come in here, let me try something else. In addition to changing the number of positions, the next thing that I would test would be how many to open on each signal. So instead of doing 5, let's say I lower it down to just getting 2 positions per day. So I'll come in and change the name to 2PD for 2 per day. Rerun it. There we go, it's complete. You can see it's actually very close to what we had before. I'd actually then test 1 per day, 3 per day. But since this didn't perform as well as the 5 stocks per day, I'm not going to keep this one. So I'll delete this one and go back to the one I had before, which was getting all 5 at once. So once you've done that testing, where you've modified your stop criteria, your market timer, the number of positions, and the number of positions per day. So I got those 4 things that I would do. You would do the same type of a thing with your shorting searches or your bearish searches. So then you'd end up with maybe 1 or 2 long searches that you like and 1 or 2 short searches that you like. And then at that point, you'd put them together. As an example, let's say I liked this high VST plus YSG search with the settings that we just went over. And as an example, let's say the shorting search that I liked the best based on the testing that I did maybe was show me the money short. So what you could then do is create a copy of this and then put the 2 together. So I'm going to come down to the automation rules down, and instead of going to cash, I'm going to sell short, change this to show me the money short. So we're going to sell short, and of course you do all the same settings. You would have ended up with whatever stop criteria that you liked. Go over to the more settings. We're going to lower this down to 5 positions. We're going to close any open position and just go completely short when that confirm down call comes. And of course I got to make sure I change these settings down here to match the challenge criteria. Make sure I meet the rules. Set that to 2. And then of course rename it. I'll just call it dollar short for show me the money short. And then you'd rerun it. And there we go. Look at that, 45% during that time period. Now hopefully at this point you would have done a lot more testing. You would have come up with a nice result. And you notice all we did here was just do about 1 year worth of testing. The contest actually starts with July of 2008. So from here you take your results and expand it out to the larger date range. So in summary, some of the tips that I had for you here were to, number 1, start with your quick tests. And let's take a look at that market timing graph again. Here's that market timing graph. And remember, the tip was to start doing quick tests. From bottoms to tops, bottom to a top to test out your long searches, and top to bottom to test out your bearish searches. The more quick tests you do, the easier your life will be when you get to the back testing and auto testing stage. Once you've done all your quick tests, my next tip was start doing back tests. Modify some simple things first. Start with stop criteria and start with things like a 30% gain, 10% loss, recommendation equals a sell, a trailing stop, and then modify things like the market timing signal and your position sizing. When Steve presented his video back on August 2nd, he showed an overall gain of over 200% during the time period. And he also showed some rules on how to calculate the efficiency of your portfolio. Let me just say this. If you get anywhere near 200% and you don't know how to calculate the efficiency of your portfolio, I would suggest just submitting it. You would submit it to the email address of cachallenge@vectorvest.com. And the deadline is August 31st, 2013, so you only have 1 week remaining. I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight. I wish you the best of luck with your challenge entries, and we look forward to seeing the results. Good night, everybody.